The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast belong solely to those expressing them and do not necessarily reflect the OSIP Foundation Incorporated or any other group or individual. This podcast may contain dialogue or subject material that could be considered for mature audiences only. All aspects of how you play the game and the OSIP Foundation Incorporated are protected by copyright and other state and federal intellectual property laws. Unauthorized use without the express written consent of the OSIP Foundation Incorporated is strictly prohibited. If you're interested in sponsoring How You Play the Game, please email us at podcast@osipfoundation.org. Your sponsorship may be tax deductible. Well, it's that time again. No, it's not time for me to take a shower. It's time for our podcast, How You Play the Game, the official podcast of the OSIP Foundation Incorporated. Yours truly, Jack Furlong, with you as we talk to you about what's going on in the world of sportsmanship. The month is February. The year is 2020. Glad you can be with us. As always, you can check us out online at osipfoundation.org and submit your podcast stories. The email address is podcast@osipfoundation.org, and social media is facebook.com/osipfoundation, and Twitter and Instagram are both at OSIP Foundation, hashtag How You Play the Game. Across the way from me, our producer engineer, Mr. Sean Ryan. Sean, hello.
Hey there.
What's up?
Everything.
Well, that's the sky, or,
well, not everything.
Not everything.
If everything
okay.
was up, we'd be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, this is true.
Some things are like down, like the ground,
You
which is good.
You are breaking some new ground there.
Oh, see, I see what you did
Yeah,
there.
I need some help. Anyway, let's jump right into it. Our guest today is Brenda Hilton from Officially Human. Brenda, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. And before we get too far down the line, and before I forget, I love your logo.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. We had a close friend design it. I don't think I had to tell her what to do. She just did it, and she's clearly smarter than me. So we thank her for that. I think I'm being paid to say that too. So
That's okay.
That's okay. So anyway,
right.
Brenda, you've got a fantastic organization here, Officially Human. Why don't we start with the basics? Tell us what it's about and why you started it.
Well, back in 2000, I'm going to go way back here. In 2000, I was serving on a school board, a small Lutheran school board, and the chairman of the school board was the commissioner of the Mid-Continent Conference, now the Summit League, and we were wrapping up a meeting, and I said, I'm thinking about getting a job. Our kids were older, our youngest was about to go to preschool, and he said, do you want a job? And I said, people talk about you all the time and what your job is. I don't even know what you do. So he asked me to come in and meet with them, and I went and met with them, and I started 2 hours a day, 2 days a week in October of 2000. And at the time, that's right when Youngstown State was leaving the Mid-Continent Conference, and so their full-time office manager left, and John Steinbrecher slotted me into that position, and one of the jobs was to work with all the sport coordinators. So I started working with the sport coordinators, learned a lot about baseball, softball, volleyball, soccer, and obviously men's and women's basketball and how they are assigned. And so I just kind of fell in love with what you all do off the court. And so spent some time, did that for 11 years, and the Big Ten, the Mid-American Conference, and the Summit League decided to form a consortium in men's basketball, similar to what they had in women's basketball for a few years. And they called me, Rick Boages from the Big Ten called me and said, hey, are you interested in taking this job? We know that you know the system very well. And so I took the job. I never interviewed for it. I never submitted a resume. They may regret that now. I don't know for sure. But
I wish all job interviews were that simple. Okay?
Right. So anyway, I started here, and then I was obviously only focused on men's basketball officiating. And Rick gave me a lot of leverage to learn the ins and outs of assigning and camps. And over the years, I was just kind of tracking on, oh my gosh, this is terrible the way these officials are treated. And things kind of took off at the Big Ten in my career as far as the director of building services, and the consortium went from 3 conferences to 6 conferences. And I told Rick all the time, I'm good, but I'm not this good. I can't manage 2,100 games and do the building. So made the decision to go with the building, and still kind of had that itch for the officiating side, and talked to quite a few people in the industry. And a really good friend of mine at the NCAA took me to lunch and said, you can't get out of this. I said, well, I already did. It's done. And he said, no, you find a way to stay involved. So the year of 2018, my husband and I just kind of tracked on stories and kept really engaged with officials. And in January of 2019, I was sitting at my table on a Saturday morning and wrote a business plan. And the next morning, Tim and I presented it to him, and I was very passionate about what I was saying and how we needed to do it. And he said, hey, let's try it. So here we are today, and the message is getting out there, our name's getting out there. But the biggest thing we want to do, I want to do, is raise awareness.
Amen.
That
Absolutely.
If we can just start to just move the needle a little bit on the way that these men and women are treated, we'll be okay. And we're not doing this to become millionaires. We're just trying to make a difference. And I look at all officials, and I think, my gosh, you're at my game today, and you are probably missing one of your own kids or grandkids' games. And that's the stuff, that's the messaging that we're trying to get out, is get people to understand that it really should not be all about that parent in those stands, but look at the whole picture of officiating. And hopefully we're going to make a difference.
Well, I sure hope so. I mean, everything that you just described is very personal to us on so many different levels, because we share a lot of the same values. We try and do the same kind of stuff in that general area. And, as an official myself, you've described so many experiences that I've had where you wonder what is going through people's minds when they say things to you sometimes, and you have to stop and take a step back and say, are you human too? I mean, do you not understand that when this game is over, I'm going to collect $60, go home, have a beer, and because of the way that you've just acted, rethink my life? I mean, it can be that grueling and cruel sometimes. It's very insulting. And as an official, I know we love what we do. We do it for a multitude of reasons, as you've said, beautifully on your website, that we are out there to stay in the game, to earn a little extra cash, to whatever the case may be. And we really don't need to suffer that kind of an abuse over what is in essence a youth sports game.
It's interesting too. I've gotten a couple comments over the years from different friends talking about the money, and they might be talking about the collegiate level, the high Division I level, and how much money these men and women are making. And I say all the time, then go try it. Go try it. If you think it's that easy and the money is that great, go try it.
Absolutely.
But don't judge these people on what they're doing with their money. I've also heard people complain, well, those officials are just working for beer money. So what?
Right.
If you decide to go cut somebody's grass, do you want to be judged on how you're going to spend the money that you earned?
Right.
No.
Yeah. I can't think of a time that I've cut grass for beer money in my life. Can you, Sean?
Right.
No. Have you ever used a lawnmower, Sean?
I have.
You have?
I have.
Well, you're better than me.
I didn't get paid for it,
No,
but I have.
I never used a lawnmower before. I think I've gone out and actually picked blades of grass
Do you
one
use
by
scissors?
one. No, they don't let me around scissors anymore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a different story for a different episode.
Because you ran with them that one time?
That one time.
That one
yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And they were probably the child scissors, but that's okay.
With the rounded edges?
Not only that, but there was the one pair of the lefty scissors that you have in the box. There's 29 pairs of righty scissors, and you get the lefty one. And
you probably ate the crayons too, right?
Don't judge me, all right?
The blue ones taste the best.
Do you know from experience?
No.
No.
No. That's awesome.
Oh, man.
That's awesome.
So, lost my train of thought.
Sorry. It happens.
This does happen.
We're talking about people eating crayons.
Right, crayons and whatnot. It's funny when you bring up the idea of basically proposing to people, well, why don't you try it? I've had colleagues in the past say one of their best comebacks to people who abuse them on the field is something along the lines of, hey, classes start February 1st, so if you want to come join our class, we'd love to have you. We're always in need of more officials. And then people kind of look at you like, what? And at least it gets them to shut up. But, it's something that they've never come across before. And I think it leads into a good point that you raise this in that we are short on officials everywhere, and games are getting canceled, and trying to recruit more officials is just as difficult because they're like, why do I want to go out there for that pay structure and take that kind of abuse? I mean, you might be making $60 for 2 hours worth of work, but is it really worth it if your psyche is going to be damaged?
Well, that is it. We're hearing a lot at the collegiate level and obviously the youth level as well. We're talking about mental health wellness. Well, has anybody stopped to think about the mental health wellness of officials across the board and how they're treated? Nope.
Yeah.
Because they're the necessary evil, and they're going to show up, they're going to have their whistle, they're going to have their shirt, they're going to have their shoes, and we're going to yell at them.
Yeah.
But people aren't focusing on that part of it. I've actually connected with a girl named Rachel, and I'm going to find her name right here, Changing the Narrative. And she is an ESPN commentator, I think. I think she has an online program. And that's one of the things I'm talking to her about is how can we align our two organizations to talk about how do we help officials in this space? Because I've known an official that's committed suicide, and that is not a cool thing. And I can't tie it to officiating. Maybe there was other stuff, but when we're talking about we're trying to recruit and retain young officials, but we tie so much mental health wellness to that. Are we taking care of them too? Because we better make sure that it's on the forefront of our minds.
Absolutely. You're 100% right. I know that obviously the perception of mental health is evolving for the best now. I mean, broadcaster Josh Lewin, who did radio for the Mets and the Red Sox, he has an organization about mental health, which is a fantastic organization. And our friends over at Close Call Sports and the Umpire Ejection Fantasy League out there in Anaheim, run by Gil Imber, the organist for the Ducks, is very high on mental health and whatnot. I mean, we have our own hotline for the mental health of officials at what is it? Officials Anonymous or Auth Anon, and every time that phone rings, you start to think like, is this going to be another story of someone who's calling to say, I just got abused. I just need to talk to somebody. And I'm afraid when that number continues to rise, because it's sick. You hit the nail on the head that we don't spend the time caring about the officials. We take them for granted, and we think that because we paid the ticket fee, we can abuse them. It's our right as fans or our right as coaches and players and whatnot. And that couldn't be farther from the truth.
And Brenda, I think the key words you said before, necessary evil. I mean, how many times have we heard that before?
Well, we talked about it on an earlier episode.
Right.
Remember the necessary evil of having umpires.
Right.
And we were like, that's a terrible thing to say.
You see it on Twitter all the time.
Absolutely.
From players, from fans, from coaches. And it's toxic.
From TV personalities.
Say that again?
from TV personalities?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we talk about Paul O'Neill, the former Yankees outfielder, all the time when he's on the Yes Network. When he's not talking about officials, he is a great color commentator. He's funny. He's engaging. He's very smart. As soon as there's a problem with the officials, it's like a switch flips, like he gets PTSD, and all of a sudden it's the officials are terrible people. They need to stay out of the game and this, that, the other. And I guarantee you that all they were trying to do is do their job. And if that's a problem for Paul O'Neill, then that's Paul O'Neill's problem, not a societal problem.
Sure.
And in our literature for the OSIP Foundation, we have 4 categories that sportsmanship affects the most. The player, the fan, the official, but also the media and how they can contribute to bad sportsmanship, but also good sportsmanship. But the example that Jack brought up about Paul O'Neill is an example of bad sportsmanship in the media, because when you have someone who is a role model for so many people saying these things about officials, that is propagating the negative sportsmanship. So it's extremely dangerous having that presence in the media and having that much influence over so many listeners.
Well, that actually came up. We presented at the NCAA Final Four for volleyball and presented in front of 240 officials. And afterwards, a few officials came up to us and said, "Hey, what are you doing about the commentators?" Because I don't know the famous official or the famous volleyball player that is now a commentator, but they were saying that person doesn't always keep up with the rule changes,
right,
and is hammering on officials, yet doesn't know the rules. So
right. What are you thinking, Sean?
The test that the managers.
Oh, right. Yeah, this is the.
I love that.
This is the story that Sean loves, in that ESPN did a test of 10 questions of all baseball rules and gave it to a contingent of players, coaches, and broadcasters. And they all, I think maybe one person got them all right, and the rest did pretty poorly. And the lowest score was 1 out of 10, and it was by current New York Yankees manager Aaron Boone. So, I mean, I don't mean to draw a conclusion here, but I will. So, and and to follow up on that, what people don't understand is that the rules of any official sport or any major league sport, professional sport, are significantly different than the lower levels. So what you have happen in college sports is different than high school sports, is different than youth sports, etc. We just had a talk on it 2 weeks ago about the difference between official baseball rules and high school baseball rules. And I find myself arguing with coaches because I have to explain to them, if you crack open the rule book, you will see that there are differences here that, it may behoove you to know these.
So I'll tell you this story. If my son listens to this, he will be mortified that I'm telling this story.
Oh, that's fine. We'll tell him. That's fine.
Yeah. He was probably 12 years old, working a baseball game, youth baseball game. And, I'm the mom, so I'm going to go and I'm going to watch and make sure he does everything right, even though I don't know one baseball rule, but that's okay. Yeah. So coach complains about a call, approaches my son. The other coach comes out of the dugout, approaches my son. And I don't know what came over me. I went up to these two guys and I said, "Where's your rule books?" And they looked at me like I was crazy, because I was. Right. And they're like, "Who are you?" And I said, "No, where's your rule books? Why don't you check the rule?" And neither one of them had their rule book. And I go, "Call stands, go back to your benches." I had no business doing that. Right. None. But
that's great. What's funny about that is that, we, as umpires, if someone brings a rule book out onto the ball field, we immediately eject them. So from a certain standpoint, you were baiting them, and I have even more respect for you now, because this is just a fantastic thing.
It was crazy.
That's
my
great.
Son's like, what are you doing?
I will be sure to stalk your son to make sure that he gets mortified as well.
Yeah. Yes.
That's the right thing to say.
That's
Very good.
On a sportsmanship podcast,
Yes.
you nailed it, right?
Right. I always say it's non-creepy stalking. It's fine.
No, I
Yeah.
mean, if they don't
It's
know
fine.
that you're in the bushes outside, how do they know you're even there?
Right, you
So
just gotta hide it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So the police are listening, I know. So,
Right. Well, then I'm in trouble.
well, join the club. Brenda, you talked about a survey that you did on your latest email blast. Tell us what that was about.
So, back in February of last year, I started calling the State of Illinois High School Association because I'm in the state of Illinois. Shouldn't they want to do anything for me, right?
Right, of course. Yeah, you pay taxes. Yeah.
Right. So I wanted to get a lot of constituents. I wanted to get their input. And I thought the way to start was to get the coaches' input. And finally, the state of Illinois agreed to send a survey out from Officially Human to all the coaches in the state of Illinois. And in about 2 weeks, we got 2,500 responses. So we thought, okay, well, that's pretty good data.
Right.
Then we sent it out in Wisconsin. Got probably 1,900, I think.
Okay.
And then we kind of switched gears a little bit and said, okay, we started talking to the High School Federation, started talking to them a lot, said, hey, we want to do this survey. We'd like you to help, at least facilitate it. Well, what they did was they provided us every state association's email address, contact information. So developed a 53-question survey. It takes about 40 minutes to complete and send it out. 14 states agreed to send it out, and we got 19,000 responses.
Wow.
Yeah. So then we have this data, and we're like, great, we have this data. Now what do we do? Well, in the meantime, I had been having some conversations with Dr. David Pierce at IUPUI in Indianapolis. Mm-hmm. They have a Sport Innovation Institute. So they have agreed they are breaking down the data. They're analyzing all of it for us and going to give us a very nice, robust report. But in the survey, it's kind of slick because we will be able to provide each state their data as well as one full data set.
Okay.
But in the state of Indiana, for example, they may think they have a problem in softball where, 25% or 50% of the softball umpires aren't coming back. Well, our data will be able to tell them, well, no, actually, you're really good in softball, but in soccer, you have a real problem. The survey will be able to tell them, because we asked the how do I say this? The number of years they plan on working.
I see.
So 1 to 3, 3 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 plus.
Okay.
And so a lot of those answers mirror what the NASO survey does, except ours goes just a little bit deeper.
Okay.
So they have 17,000, we have 19,000. We should be able to come up with some really, really good plans, nationwide initiatives to get people, spread the message of humanizing officials and spread the message of we need officials in the games.
Did you hear anything back from the states who did not send the survey out? Was there any reason why they did not want to participate?
No, I
Okay.
didn't. There was a couple of states, certain region or sections. One section of California sent it out. One section of New York sent it out. I think what I've learned through this whole process, these state associations are underfunded, they're understaffed, and the last thing they want to do is push out another survey.
Right.
And now the states that have participated, when we go and we present the data to the Federation, I think that may drum up some more interest. And also people, I think they think, well, nothing's going to be done. Nothing can happen. Nothing's going to change. We're going to keep down this path. And that's not what we want people to think. We want people to think that, hey, Officially Human and every other organization out there that's trying to humanize sport officials, they want to make this better for us. They want to be our advocate.
Right.
I'm not trying to take anything away from any of these states. I'm just trying to be the person that collects the data. We haven't charged anybody to do this.
So you're ultimately trying to be the ally in this, and rather than the the person who's kind of fanning the flames. You're trying to express that there is an issue and you need to work together, rather than saying how dare you let this happen? We need to fix this, as if it was some sort of rallying cry. It's an encouraging process rather than a problematic process.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. The other interesting thing about doing the surveys, there was back in February, March, when I was non-creepy stalking some states to do the survey for me. I was talking to one of the states. I go, I don't understand. Why wouldn't you want to do this? It's going to cost you no money.
Right.
And 6 months later, that particular state reached out to me and said, hey, we want to do this for you now.
Nice.
We want to do it. And so they did it. The other interesting part about our survey, as opposed to NASO, I believe, I don't have the facts on this, I believe it hit only their members.
Yes.
Where ours hit non-members.
Right.
Because people that may be grade school, high school officials aren't necessarily part of that program.
And for people who don't know, NASO is the National Association of Sports Officials, and you do not necessarily have to be a member of that in order to be an official. I know I don't even think I'm a member, and yet I've been doing high school baseball for 14 years. It's like a union, basically. That's kind of a voluntary thing.
And they do some really, really good stuff.
Yes.
Really good stuff. I went to their summit last year, and I was blown away at how much time, energy, money, resources they put into their summit. It was an amazing experience. And that's where I met a lot of the state high school associations, was through there.
The other thing I would imagine is that NASO is comprised of officials. So it's officials, saying officials need better treatment, et cetera. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Officially Human is not directly run by officials. So therefore you have, what is in essence a third party backing this claim, saying this is a serious issue. And if we're taking it seriously, that gives much more momentum behind it to say we all need to take this more seriously.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. That's exactly right. Yeah. The one podcast I did, he asked me, so have you ever officiated? I'm like, oh, no. No,
you're smarter than all of us. You wouldn't go out there.
No.
I'm an idiot for stepping on the field.
No. We did go to a high school. We went to a couple high schools to talk to the parents, and would like to do more of that because it's fascinating to tell some of the stories. And I told them two stories. I told them one of our officials years ago. His wife passed away from breast cancer. And so he took some time off, but he came back for the end of the season in the basketball tournament. And we're in a gym, and it's silent, no fans there. And a fan for one of the schools says, hey, Mike, why don't you go home and sit in your lounge chair and think about your wife? I mean, true story.
Wow.
And so we obviously had that fan ejected. That was probably one of the turning points for me, when I'm like, something has to be done.
Yeah.
And then I've seen coaches' wives chase officials back to locker rooms over, you lost by 20.
Right. Yeah. This wasn't a nail biter.
Right. Right. And I haven't actually physically seen this, but officials getting spit on.
Oh, yeah.
Going to halftime. Well, what does anybody think an official's going to do? Well, now we expect that official to go into a locker room, gather themselves, and come back and work again.
Right.
It's crazy.
It is.
And I just think there's so much misunderstanding about officiating. I told these parents, when these officials show up to your games, number one, they're probably coming from their full-time job. Mm-hmm. Number two, they don't get a second chance. They can't forget a whistle. They can't forget their shoes. They can't forget their pants. They have to have it all. So They are the most organized creatures I have ever met.
Yes, we are.
Yes.
We are very OCD.
Yes. Yes. Never check a bag.
This is true. This is very true.
Yeah.
Now, do you find that, at least in your experience, in your research, etc., is it the fans, specifically the parents, the players, the coaches? Is there one group that stands out more as providing more of a problem towards officiating, or is it all kind of equal, jumbled, or is it situational and so on and so forth? What do you see the most?
I would say at this point, without having all the data analyzed, the parents and fans.
Okay. That doesn't surprise me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't think that we are not, we're not solving cancer with this survey.
Right.
There's a lot of stuff in there that people have already known. However, if we can raise awareness, NASO can raise awareness, you can raise awareness, it's only going to help the cause.
Right. As I'm going through these questions and whatnot, I started thinking about all of the sad stories of the various times I've had to eject coaches, players, fans.
I was going to ask you about fans.
Yeah,
and how many you've
listen. I've ejected them all. Okay, the only saving grace is that a few of them had hilarious stories behind them.
The guy with the golf?
Yes. One of our mutual friends makes me tell this all the time. I was in my first year. I was working the bases in a Prep 13 championship game. It's like 11 in the morning. It's 100 degrees out on like a May Saturday. They were running the Kentucky Derby that day. My partner's got the plate, and he has only a navy blue umpire shirt. We have tons of different colors in our cars and whatnot, and he only happens to have a dark color on a 100-degree day. And he's having a terrible game behind the plate, and coaches are arguing with him left and right. And finally, he tosses a coach, and then it just starts escalating from there. The next play should be a routine ground out to the second baseman. The second baseman takes his time, makes it a bang-bang play. I call the kid out. It goes against the same team. Now the first base coach is yelling at me, and all of a sudden, deep in the third base stands, all the way in the back row, this one guy stands up and above everybody else yells, "Hey, Blue, why don't you go home if you don't want to be out here?" So I ejected him, and I said, "Well, why don't you get out of here?" And without missing a beat, and this is where we get the rated M for immature rating, he says, "Good, I'll go home and watch golf instead of this shit." At which point I then turned to my partner and I said, and I quote, "I don't even think golf is on today." And I will never forget that. And I legitimately was like, well, they're running the Kentucky Derby. They wouldn't schedule a golf tournament the same. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. That's like driving on the parkway and parking in the driveway. It doesn't make any sense. So, that's a funny one. On the flip side, I've had to call the cops a number of times just so that I can take my plate gear off. That's the stuff that should not be happening. Right. I shouldn't be fearing for my life simply because I'm trying to do a job. And that's what has to change.
I was talking to a referee this week who does a lot of high school signing, and he brought in a kid to do his first JV high school game, and a mom at the end of the game just was annihilating this kid. And not only did nobody back him up, but the AD of the school said, "You need to have thicker skin."
My God.
The assigner says, "I don't think you're ready for this." You think that kid's ever going to work again?
No.
No.
And that's horrendous. That's absolutely horrendous. There's
the
no
AD saying that,
and then the assigner too.
Yeah,
that's horrible. At the very least, and as someone who has experience within the assigning world and that I work with assigners very closely, if there's going to be an issue like that, they don't say that. They might
Right.
say, listen, okay, I'm going to put you on some other games just to, help you get your feet wet.
Or that school could be blacklisted.
Exactly. We're going to do something so that you can have a better experience and whatnot. We need to work with you, not against you. And
Right.
all of those people there were in the wrong. And that's absolutely terrible. I have the exact same problem in that. And I hate it, the fact that it comes back to me right now.
Right, right.
Not that I don't mind sharing these stories, but Brenda, what you're talking about is hitting home for me, because I guarantee you, if I'm feeling it, every single official feels it in some way, shape, or form. And that's just sad. That's just absolutely sad that we accept that. It shouldn't be the norm. It should be, the exception to the rule, rather than knowing that, when the season starts, I'm going to get yelled at. And that's just how it's going to be for 6 months.
Right. Well, and talk about that for a minute. So you talked about 6 months. These are no longer 6 month jobs.
Right.
They're year round.
Yes, they are.
And we're expecting people to go to camps and spend more weekends away from their families, without talking about the mental health and
Right.
the family unit. There's so many layers to it that I can't fix it all.
Right. No, I understand. I understand. Listen, I know from personal experience, there was a couple of years ago, I took a summer off and stopped umpiring by like the 4th of July. And I kid you not, when the fall came around, I was like, wow, that was a refreshing, enjoyable summer.
That was a couple of years ago.
It was a couple of years ago. And I look back and I realized it was because I was not officiating that summer. And all of a sudden, I physically felt better. I was not mentally run down. I was not dealing with the anxiety of knowing that I got to go step on a field. And
That's not the way it should be.
no,
though.
it's not. A buddy of mine who is a retired minor league umpire called me and said, I'm hanging him up. And I said, why are you hanging him up? You're 2 steps from the major leagues. And he said, I've gotten to the point where I dread going to the ballpark every day. And that's what, and I know I have to get out. And that, no matter how you get to that, it shouldn't happen.
Well, and when you think about it too, when you're talking to parents, you, just like everything else, 80% of the economy is run by small businesses.
Right.
Well, don't you think 80%, and I'm just using this number, 80% of the officials across the country are working lower level college and high school and youth games?
Right.
So
Yeah.
if you don't have them, you're not going to have games. And everybody knows games are being canceled, and everybody has stories about this, except we are tracking on them. That's what I think the difference is. You and I, we're looking for this stuff.
Right.
In Chicagoland, there's plenty of officials. They're not having games canceled. But in Bismarck, Illinois, where I'm from, they just had a weekend of games canceled because they didn't have enough officials.
Right.
So it is happening, and now they're feeling it a little bit. However, does it change the way they act when they go to a game?
No.
That's what I don't know.
My guess would be no, because I feel like as a fan or as anything, you get caught up in the moment so easily. And I think that, at least in my experience, you have a better shot of getting people to kind of stop the roller coaster before it gets too high, rather than to eliminate the roller coaster. Emotions are always going to be running high in competition, especially athletic competition. It's always going to happen. So if we can get people to recognize that and then take a step back rather than changing the narrative of the sport, I feel like that's an attainable goal, because I in a perfect world, I would love to change the narrative 100%. I just don't know how feasible that is.
Correct.
And at least, getting people to alter their thinking in the moment is still not only an achievable goal, but it's still accomplishing the mission. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would. Totally. So switch gears for a second,
Sure.
because you guys probably have as much experience in this as I do. A lot of the comments, not a lot, I'll say, I don't know what the percentage is. Comments coming back from officials are, when you're at a small school or a private school, they can't say anything to the donors.
Right. Yes.
How do you change that?
That's a great question, and I can relate to that because about 10 years ago, I got a call that there was an opening for a coaching job at a local private school, and they said you should apply for it. And I thought about it, and someone said, "Don't do it." I said, "Why not?" He said, "Because it's a private school. People are with tons of cash and who are donating tons of cash are going to send their kid, and they're going to be terrible at baseball, and because of the money, they're going to expect that kid to play, and you're not going to want to have to deal with it." And the good news that I can say is that the athletic directors will at least work with you when it comes to students who are behaving badly. Last year, I had a situation at a local private school where there were kids from the school lining up along the fence and were basically heckling the other team. And I told the AD, those kids have to be removed. And the game will not go on until they're removed. And the AD did it in a heartbeat. And
wow, that's awesome.
And that's great. But you raise a fantastic point in that, what if the parents do that? And what if the parents are the ones who are shelling out tons of cash for this? You know, I think the only thing that we can say, at least, is that, at least in New Jersey, the rule of thumb is that it's the athletic director or the site director who has to officially handle unruly fans. It's not up to the officials per se. They can obviously tell the athletic director these people have to go, and then it's the AD who has to remove them. I was at a middle school doing a baseball game, and there was two private schools playing, and the visiting team had a father in the stand who was acting immaturely, and I told the AD he's got to go, and he was able to get him to go because it was not his school. So again, we're making some progress, but that doesn't necessarily solve it from the standpoint of when it's the home school.
It's somewhat applicable also to the professional sports because, I mean, ostensibly fans pay for tickets.
Right.
And are in a way paying for salaries indirectly for players.
Right.
So, I mean, the same argument could be said for fans saying, "Oh, well, I'm paying to be here, so I should act however I want."
It seems like when you combine these two settings, really the only way to stop it is to let it hit rock bottom. And when the officials decide they don't want to be working those games, or the fans stop coming out and paying the salaries of the players, people will realize, geez, maybe I need to look in the mirror and fix this. I would hope.
I hope so.
You know,
or if there are less games, to the point where the more and more games have to be canceled because there are no officials.
Right. The problem that I see with it, and Brenda, tell me if you agree, the people who need this help the most are the ones who never recognize that they need the help. They're usually of a malignant, narcissistic type of personality who will never be able to take a step back and realize, I'm the problem. What do you think?
I think there are those people out there. However, I have some really good friends that are some of the biggest jackasses when it comes to officiating.
Hey, don't use my name in vain. Don't. That's a commandment. We don't do that.
I'm like, what are you talking about? As a matter of fact, I was getting text messages last night from this friend, and I said I would have ejected the coach.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So I think there's those people, but then I think the everyday fan, everybody thinks that officials are out to get them, and their kid has to win, and their kid's going to get the scholarship, and it's so frustrating sometimes.
Do you see a correlation between what happens professionally and how that trickles down? Because I know I see it. I know I see the people who say, well, this is how they act in the major leagues, so that gives me carte blanche to act this way at the high school level.
Well, it's interesting you say that. We have just probably picked up on that point a little bit more when we're talking to people. We've had a lot of people say to us, well, what about the TV commentators?
Right.
So then we kind of started, okay, yes, there is a correlation. So if Jay Billis is on ESPN and he's hammering on the officials, and then I go to my daughter's basketball game and I think I know all the rules and the officials are stupid, then I'm just going to start yelling because Jay Billis does it.
Right.
Why wouldn't all of us do it?
Right.
I think that is actually going to gain some traction as well, is people are going to start calling them out a little bit more.
Right.
Because one of the things that I really, really struggled with for years is nobody is giving them a voice.
Right.
So the NASO survey gave them a voice. We're giving the lower level officials a voice. And together, it is going to be very telling to people.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like some of the organizations that try and have a voice, we've seen the MLB Umpires Association, the NFL referees, they've started like a Twitter account, and they try and explain to the general public, why certain things are the way that they are when it comes to calls and whatnot. And unfortunately, one tweet will have 10,000 replies from ignorant people who don't know what they're talking about, so it's a defeatist attitude, like, why are we going to go through with this? Why do we keep fighting this supposed good fight if it doesn't do any good?
And if every sport could have a Dean Blandino and Gene Steratore,
right,
who explain them so well, and even if they may have a difference of opinion on the call, they're going to let the officials on the field do their job,
right,
and they're not going to try to say something different. I don't know if it's a money issue in every other sport, or like you said, all right, well, Gene Steratore said this, so I'm going to tweet it and I'm going to get 10,000 responses to it, and then
right,
it's just going to become a hot mess on Twitter. The other thing that I find interesting when we're talking about social media and people saying stuff, you can look at so many positive situations in, hey, Jack got this call right, and there's 3 likes on it. Mm-hmm. But when Jack got that call wrong, there's 10,000.
Right. That's very true. That sounds like my dating life, actually,
right,
more so than anything else. Don't tell my girlfriend. But it's the truth. It speaks to the idea that, at least in football, you said it. You have the Gene Steratores of the world, the Mike Pereiras, whoever. They're providing the commentating on the officiating, and that's fantastic. But it's almost like no one is watching this stuff to hear what the officials have to say. And, we've heard that rhetoric before. No one's coming to see us umpire and whatnot. And I get that. I absolutely get that. I'm just afraid that these networks or these media outlets don't utilize that resource for the idea that nobody wants to hear that. And, it's not a moneymaker. It's not sexy. It's not getting eyeballs to the television. And you have to almost wonder, like, that shouldn't matter at this point. If the civility of our society is trending downwards, whether or not we're making money off of this should not be the end-all, be-all as to whether or not we need to do our fans a service and provide these explanations properly.
Right, right. The other thing that you think about, too, is people don't realize that officials do not want to be part of the game.
Right.
They just want to, they're just officiating. That's all they're doing. And the ones in my 20 years of doing this, there's been a few that have been very, overly arrogant.
Yes.
And very much about themselves, and they don't last. They don't move up the food chain. Because you can't sustain that
right
at the very high level. Now, maybe in NBA and, Major League Baseball, I don't know. But the other thing people don't realize is not everybody's doing this to make it to the top Division I.
Right.
Some people are doing it just because they want to help out their community.
They want to stay in the game. They want to exercise. They want to do, whatever the case may be.
And I don't know why they want to do it. I applaud them all.
On behalf of them all, I thank you for that, because there are days that I question that as well. And then I step on the scale and I'm like, oh, because I was running around today, I lost a pound, so I'm going to keep doing this.
Right.
This is much better than exercise.
It's really tough to do a job that when no one notices that you're doing a good job.
Right.
Where people only notice that you're doing a bad job.
Right.
One of the
It's a thankless job.
right.
Yeah.
One of the things that I parallel it to is music production.
Oh yeah.
Both Jack and I are musicians as well, and no one notices when you do a good job.
Right.
But
They take it for granted.
But they take it for granted. But when you make one little mistake, that's everyone's all over you for it.
Yep.
Right. I when I talk to the high school groups, I ask this question: anybody that went to work today or parented today, how did you perform? 70 to 80%, 80 to 90, 90 to 100. Let them raise their hands. And I say, if you perform between 80 and 100% every day of your life, do you think that you deserve to be yelled and screamed at? Because that's what these officials, overall, it's about 85% accuracy.
Right. It's even higher for certain officials. I know that the major league average for strike zones is like around 95%, which is better than the automated ball strike system that they're trying to impose. So if the humans are beating the computers, the sci-fi movie has not been written yet.
Not at all.
But you're absolutely right. And the other thing is that we as officials are expected to start perfect and then improve.
Yes.
So figure that one out without blood spraying out your ears. It doesn't work,
No. I've always been amazed at, particularly this, because I have more experience in this, in the sport of basketball, when everybody focuses on the last 2 minutes of the game.
Right.
And here you played 20 minutes of a high school game, or 24 minutes, whatever they play, and you are focused on the last 2 minutes of the game. And
what happened to the other, 22 minutes?
Right.
I say the same thing. I said, they say, "Oh, Blue, you missed that call. That call cost us the game." I said, "Coach, it's a 7-inning game. There are 3 outs per inning, so that you had 21 outs, and the one that I missed cost you. What happened to the other 20? What did you do then?"
Fallacy of the predetermined outcome.
Now, I took calculus in high school, and then I stopped. So my math could be wrong.
You didn't need any more than that.
No. We count to 4 for a living now. That's, I just know that.
That's hard enough.
Look, listen, I can barely dress myself most days, okay? So
as long as you got your blue shirt on, that's
this
all
is very true, especially on the hot days when I have to eject people for, going to watch golf. So
that's not being played.
Yeah. Brenda, what else can people do to support this cause? I mean, obviously you have your website, which is a fantastic website. It's got links to supporting the mission and whatnot, but what specifically can people do to get behind this?
Well, that's a loaded question.
Okay.
I think we're not going to fix this alone. Officially Human is not going to do it. I think it's taking the Officially Human message, your message, everybody else that's doing this, and say, hey, there's a lot of groups out there right now that are really trying to fix this and address this, and everybody's trying to raise awareness that this is a real problem.
Right.
I would love people to go to my website and donate to the cause and help us. What we will do with that money is we are turning that into additional PSAs, talking about doing some education pieces for high school, grade school parents, which I think it will be really, really good. Won't be anything too robust, and we won't make anybody read more than 4 pages. But
that's like 3 too many. So
right,
reading's
exactly.
hard.
Yeah.
We've lost interest because I'm a little ADD myself, so I know it's got to be 4 pages or under. But things like that, just going and talking about. I don't know if you've heard about Officially Human, but they're trying to fix this problem.
Right.
They're trying to address it and raise awareness. I think that's probably the biggest thing we can do right now.
I agree. That's amazing. Brendan, before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to say? The floor is completely yours. If you'd like to plug anything, thank anybody, whatever you want to do, it's all you.
One thing I want to do, it's probably a little far for you to drive. However, at the Big Ten Women's Basketball Tournament, we are hosting, along with the Horizon League and the Indiana Sports Corps, we are hosting a officiating symposium. So we're bringing people from the NCAA, the High School Federation, experts in the field, other parks around the Indianapolis area to talk about. Everybody's going to have their own piece. So the parks are going to talk about how they address fan behavior, how they are struggling to get officials to work their games, their basketball, baseball games. And then the NCAA and High School Federation, they'll talk about how they are doing huge officiating drives, so to sign people up. So that's kind of a cool thing. We're tracking. Hopefully, people will track on that and come to that. But otherwise, just keep, go to the website and support the mission. That would be amazing.
We can easily do that.
Absolutely.
That's nothing. Brenda, we can't thank you enough. This was so fun, and we had a blast doing it. And please know that we at OSIP are behind you 110%. Whatever we can do to help your cause, you know where to find us. We're on board 100%, and I will gladly take days off from work so that I don't have to get up early to do what I can. So whatever it takes.
Well, that's great. And what OSIP is doing is amazing. It's amazing.
Well, thank you.
And I'm happy and excited to watch your journey in this whole thing. And again, we all get to come together and do this together.
This is the start of a beautiful friendship. So
yes, very much so. But thank you so much for your time and reaching out, because I really, really do appreciate it.
It's our pleasure, Brenda. Brenda Hilton from Officially Human has been our guest. It's been a blast. We thank everybody for listening. Don't forget osipfoundation.org. Officiallyhuman.com is their website. Make sure you go to it, learn about it as well. They're all over social media, as we are too. And I think that's about it, Sean. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, if I do, it's too late.
I'll reprimand you later.
Yeah, you do that anyway.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thanks, you guys. This was amazing.
It's our pleasure.
Thank
it's our
you, Brenda.
pleasure. Thank you so
All
much.
right.
Everybody,
have a great weekend, you.
Thank you. Everybody, take care, and until we talk next time, treat each other with respect.
Thanks.
How You Play the Game is a production of the OSIP Foundation, Incorporated. The producer-engineer of this episode is Sean Ryan. Music by Soundspring Studio. The executive producer of How You Play the Game is Jack Furlong. For more information, visit osipfoundation.org.